So right now, as I speak, there are at least 773 million people around the world who cannot read and write, a skill that we take for granted. And I call this a skill because it is acquired. Not being able to read and write closes nearly all opportunities in life. As a result, these children are marginalized from society. They engage in low-skilled jobs as youth and will never know their full potential. This is more prevalent and affecting the impoverished communities. That is why it is believed that 1 in 4 children are illiterate around the world. Poverty is and continues to be one of the biggest barriers to receiving a quality education. In addition, a lack of quality education, traditional and gender norms are also preventing children from receiving their fundamental right to education. When children are unable to read and write with comprehension by the age of 10, it will be very difficult for them to continue to improve on it after. As a result, their whole learning gets affected. In the last 20 years, Root to Read has been able to impact 23 million in 16 different countries. We know that this is just a drop in the ocean compared to the size of the problem. But we have set ourselves a very bold goal for the next 5 years, and we hope to reach 40 million children by 2025. Sri Lanka's educational landscape is very different. You might wonder why I say that when Sri Lanka has an estimated 98% literacy. Although the definition of the word literacy has evolved over the years, it's still considered to be the ability to read and write a sentence. It does not evaluate a child's ability to comprehend the meaning of the sentence. And this is what children in Sri Lanka struggle with. Our education system is designed to test knowledge at examinations through memory than skill, without prioritizing the quality of education and learning skills. And it has been like this for generations. Systems like these don't teach children how to read and write with comprehension. You might be alarmed that despite our high literacy rate, 84% of our primary grade children fail the essay question in their grade 5 national scholarship exam. A testament that they only read sentences through memory rather than with comprehension. In addition, our government only spends 2% of its GDP on education, a very low percentage compared to the rest of the region. As a consequence, schools in low-income communities do not receive sufficient infrastructure to provide meaningful learning material, to build libraries, and monetary resources to train teachers. This is where Root to Read's program becomes highly beneficial. Our literacy program transforms primary schools into child-friendly learning environments that enable children to become lifelong independent readers. To facilitate this, we ensure that primary schools have libraries filled with books in children's local languages, as well as teachers and librarians who are trained on how to engage a classroom of eager young learners. We stay in a school for 3 years. One of the most significant components in the program is that we train government teachers on how to teach children to read and write with comprehension, how to read to them in ways that they improve their cognitive and language skills. We host training sessions a few times a year and even develop training material to ensure that they provide quality education to children who need it the most. Our programs are also highly sustainable. We want schools and communities we work in to continue the work even after we phase out after one school or community to help another in need. That's why we work with governments, host workshops for primary students and communities to facilitate a better learning environment. For example, last year, as the pandemic hit Sri Lanka, we partnered with the government, UNICEF, and other local NGOs to develop and distribute workbooks for early primary learners to help them learn their core subjects from home. Similarly, we teach parents how to help their children read at home by developing home libraries. We also ensure that our programs are continuously researched, monitored, and evaluated by our internal research teams in order to keep improving the quality of our programs. Another unique feature in our program is that we publish books in local languages. Room to Read is one of the largest children's book publishers in the world that nobody has heard of. We publish in 35 local languages, but our books are not for sale. They are only given to the schools that we work in. Beginner readers need books and instructional materials designed for their skill levels. Challenging or complex text can intimidate students and discourage their practice. Unfortunately, books for early readers are often limited or non-existent in countries like Sri Lanka and in the vulnerable communities we work in. To remedy this, we create local language materials that readers at various levels can enjoy. These books cover topics that capture children's imagination and make reading fun while helping them to learn their mother tongue faster, develop comprehension skills, and the habit of reading at the same time. We foster a local publishing industry by training local authors and illustrators on how to publish quality children's books. In 2019, Room to Read Sri Lanka introduced non-fiction books for the first time among all Room to Read countries to help children learn information through storytelling. Literacy Cloud is a digital platform that Room to Read has developed. And we put all our books on this digital platform, and it is available for teachers, parents, and children worldwide free of charge. Finally, since you are unable to visit Sri Lanka to witness the impact of our program, I would like to share this inspiring story about Dinesh, so you too can experience how Room to Read transforms the lives of our children.
உங்களுக்கு கிபீன் வால் கதை தெரியுமா? எனக்கு ஒருக்கா சொல்லி காட்டுங்களே. ஒரு சிங்கம் நித்திரை செஞ்சுக்கிட்டான்.
Though every child would eventually speak his or her mother tongue, reading and comprehension often becomes a challenge. Even with a literacy rate of 92%, Sri Lanka is no exception. This is Thinesh Kumar, playing with his classmate Natosha. But Thinesh was not happy 12 months ago.
கொஸ்ல இந்த ஸ்ரீகணேச ஸ்கூலுக்கு நான் மாதத்தில் ஒரு 2 அல்லது 3 தடவை அப்படி வருவேன். வர டைமில் நான் குறிப்பாக பார்த்தீங்கன்னா கிரேட் 1 அதே மாதிரி கிரேட் 2 ஸ்கூலில் வந்து கிளாஸ் ரூமில் பிள்ளைகளை வந்து நான் அப்சர்வ் பண்ணி அதே மாதிரி லைப்ரரியிலையும் வந்து என்ன மாதிரி இப்போ டீச்சர்ஸ் படிப்பிக்கிறாங்க இந்த மாதிரி நான் ஹெல்ப் பண்ணுறதுக்கு வருது. அந்த டைமில் நான் கிரேட் 2 தினேஷ் ரே ஸ்கூலுக்கு ஒருக்கா போயிட்டு பார்க்கக்குள்ள ஒரு சரியான மாதிரி குழப்பம். ஸ்டார்ட்டில் ஒழுங்காக பள்ளிக்கூடத்துக்கு வரதில்லை, சரியான உடுப்பு, அதே மாதிரி படிக்கிறதில்லை, பிள்ளைகளோட அப்படிலாம் இருந்துச்சு, அடிக்கடி லீவு. அந்த டைமில் ஒரு நாள் அவங்களோட வீட்டை வந்து ஒரு வீட்டு சுச்சுவேஷன் எப்படி இருக்குன்னு சொல்லி பார்க்க வலிக்கிட்டா. இங்கே வந்து பார்த்தா அவங்களோட அப்பாவும் சரியான குடியும் அப்படியான இது கூலி வேலைக்கு தான் போகிறவர், கிடைக்கிற வருமானத்தில் நான் அவர் குடிக்கிறது அதுவும் இல்லாமல் அவர் தான் அவரை பள்ளிக்கூடத்துக்கு காலையில் எழும்பி ஒலிக்கெடுத்தி சமைச்சு சாப்பாடெல்லாம் கொடுத்து அனுப்புறது. வேலைக்கு போன பிறகு இது சொன்ன அம்மா தான் பின்னத்தில் அவரை பார்த்து கொள்வது. இங்கே வந்த பிறகு தான் எனக்கு தெரியும் தினேஷோட அம்மா வந்து சரியான கொஞ்சம் மனநோயாளியாக பாதிக்கப்பட்டிருக்காங்க.
எமது பாடசாலையில் அநேகமான மாணவர்கள் தோட்டப்புற பகுதிகளிலிருந்து வந்து கல்வி கற்கிறாங்க. அவர்களுடைய பெற்றோர்களை பார்த்தீங்கன்னா அநேகமான பெற்றோர்கள் கல்வி அறிவு இல்லாதவங்க.
We work with education authorities and local communities to build a sustainable, child-friendly learning environment to effectively encourage primary school kids to become lifelong readers. Our storybooks capture child's imagination and make reading fun. They are specifically designed to cater to different skill levels, which does not prevent or discourage any child from reading. In grade 2, a child should be able to read 45 words per minute. Our aim is to advance these kids beyond that threshold. Primary school teachers are trained in the phonics-based instructional method so they can help kids to decode sounds and words in a logical sequence. This builds confidence in students regarding their reading and comprehension skills. The teachers are also trained to manage classroom libraries, which encourages students to read independently.
நானும் இப்படி வந்து பார்த்து இதண்ணி அவங்களோட அப்பாவுக்கு ஹெல்ப் பண்ணதோட அவங்களோட அப்பாவுக்கும் கொஞ்சம் இவர் எப்படியாவது படிப்பிச்சு ஒரு நல்ல நிலைக்கு கொண்டு வரணும்.
தினேஷ் எந்தடா? தினேஷ் எந்தடா? தினேஷ் ஸ்கூலில் போயிட்டு எல்லாம் கரைச்ச பிள்ளைங்களெல்லாம் அடித்து போட்டு பொய்த்தப்பெல்லாம் கிழிச்சு போட்டு இப்படியா இருந்துடுறாரு. நானும் வெளில போகிறது அதனால சுற்றி கொஞ்சம் கஷ்டம். அம்மாவுக்கு போய் இன்னைக்கு வருத்தம் வருது நின்று சொல்லிட்டு அம்மா தான் கொஞ்சம் அதை இதை செஞ்சு கொஞ்சம் அனுப்பி விட்றாங்க.
இப்போ வந்து இவர் தினேஷோட வாசிப்பு மட்டும் நல்ல உயர்வு நிலையில் இருக்குது. அதாவது சராசரியாக இப்போ ஒரு நிமிஷத்துக்கு 50 கூட வாசிக்கக்கூடிய அளவில் இருக்கிறாரு. அதே மாதிரி கிரகித்தல் பகுதிக்கெல்லாம் நல்லபடியாக ஆன்சர் பண்ணுறாரு. டீச்சரும் தெருவாக சொல்லியிருந்தாங்க, நிறைய சந்தோஷப்பட்டிருந்தாங்க.
தினேஷ்குமார் என்ற மாணவன் மிகவும் பின்தங்கிய நிலையில் எமது வகுப்பறைக்கு வந்த ஒரு மாணவன். எனது ஒத்துழைப்பையும் வழங்கி அம்மாணவனை பின்னேற வகுப்புகளிலும் பாடசாலையில் நிறுத்தி அவருக்கு தேவையான உதவிகளை செய்து எழுத வாசிக்க பழக்கி அவர் தற்போது 45 தொடக்கம் 60 சொற்களை வாசிக்கக்கூடிய ஒரு மாணவனாக உருவாக்கி இருக்கின்றோம்.
Room to Read has benefited more than 11.6 million children across 20,000 communities in Asia and Africa since 2000. In Sri Lanka, we have benefited 1 million children, but more needs to be done.
Thank you so much, Shanti. And I'll give you Sandhya.
All right, thank you so much. I personally learned a lot, and now we would love to open it up to questions. If anyone has any, feel free to raise your hand, unmute yourself, or even send questions in the chat, either to me or to everyone. So yeah. And I'll give people a few minutes to think of questions, and I'll start off if that's okay. One thing I noticed in your bio is that you've worked with the Sri Lankan peace process, and I was wondering if you could talk about how the war impacted education in Sri Lanka, and in the aftermath, what does it look like recovering from that?
Yes, so as most of you would know, we have had a civil war raging for 30 years in our country. This started somewhere in the 1980s and then ended only in 2009. So there was very little investment in education. Now Sri Lanka has free education and free healthcare, but both these sectors crumbled because during the war, all the resources were pumped into their armed services. And this is why I mentioned that nothing has changed for generations in our education system. There has been no modernizing of the education system. It's not just infrastructure, but the curriculums and things as well, because there has to be investment to change things and catch up with the rest of the world. This has not happened. And after the war, we just started investing a little bit more, because it was just 1% of our GDP that was invested in education before. Now it has gone up to 2%. But in 2019, our economy had another major blow with the Easter bombings that happened in 2019. And immediately after that, now the pandemic has hit. So it's one blow after another. And the country's economic situation is in dire straits right now. So the investment in things like education just does not increase. So this is a huge area of concern. And it continues to be, unfortunately, even after the war.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Are there any other questions you would like to ask? Otherwise, I did get one in the chat, and I'm happy to go with that one. Okay, I'll go with the one in the chat. So what are some of your biggest challenges when working with local schools?
Well, the biggest challenge we face is the poverty. You know, parents in Sri Lanka want their children to be educated. There's a law in this country that says every child from the age of 5 to 16 must be enrolled in school. So parents want their children to be educated, but unfortunately, it's the poverty that leads them to stop the child from going to school. Though education is free, even textbooks are given free from the government, the children don't have food. So when you don't have food, the child cannot go to classroom and study. I mean, we have experienced children fainting in school because they have not eaten. There are feeding programs that are happening through World Food Program, especially for primary school children in some of the most affected areas. You might not know this, but Sri Lanka is one of the 3 countries in the world that have the highest rate of acute malnutrition. That means wasting. So these children and the other countries are South Sudan and Djibouti. When you don't have proper nutrition, the children, when the mother does not have proper nutrition, the children are born with low birth weight and their brain development is very, very slow. And you can give anything free, but the child is unable to learn. So this is a huge problem that we are facing, these levels of poverty in and around the school. That is the biggest challenge. Once the child comes to school, we give the books, we train the teachers, but unless this cycle of poverty is broken and the communities come out of it, it's very, very difficult for the children from these communities to succeed in education.
Thank you. Would anyone feel free to unmute and ask questions if you have anything?
Hi,
Or raise your
I'd
hand.
like to ask a question. I read that one of Room to Read's main goals in Sri Lanka is working towards advancing girls' education efforts. And so I was wondering what those operations look like, what kind of have the takeaways been, what are the biggest challenges, etc.
Yes, thank you for asking that question. Because Room to Read has 2 programs that we specialize in. So we work at 2 critical junctions of a child's life. We start the literacy program at the foundation, which is grade 1. So the literacy program is from grade 1 to 5, where we lay the foundation for the child's education, which is to learn to read and write with comprehension. Then when the child moves to secondary school, we start working with the girl child, because the chances of the girl child dropping out of school becomes higher at the time of entering secondary school. In Sri Lanka, we have a strange phenomenon where children drop out of school, not at the start of secondary school, which is grade 6, but at grade 10, where there's a competitive exam called the general ordinary level exam in grade 10. Here, 50% of the children fail this examination and they drop out. and most of them happen to be girls. So we take all the girls in the class and we teach them life skills and financial literacy. And we have been able to reduce the number of dropouts in our schools to 1%, which is a great achievement for us. Because when the children learn how to develop life skills and become confident in themselves, we basically develop their personality. They also realize how important education is. And they continue to come to school, they negotiate with their parents, they talk to them about the importance of education. And we also work with the parents and the community to stop the parents from pressurizing the children to drop out and get into early marriages or start working early. So our girls' education program has been very, very effective to such an extent that the government keeps asking us to start it for the boys as well. But the boys also tend to drop out at grade 10 to start economic activities. So we are in the process of actually developing curriculums to include boys, and we would be starting that hopefully by 2024 or 25, because our existing curriculums are geared only towards the girls.
Thank you very much.
I actually have a question building off of what you were just talking about, specifically focusing on teaching women financial literacy. I do know even here there is some pushback to women learning certain skills. And so do you ever have problems with that? Or is that something that you have to face? And I'm especially happy to hear that you have that focus on young girls. But I assume that must be something that has come up, and I'd love to hear your experiences fighting against biases against women.
Oh yes, it's a continuous problem we have. Always, whether it's a government official or even in the community, they ask, why are you only doing this for the girls? Why aren't you doing this for the boys? Then we have to keep reminding them, 80% of the unskilled workers who leave Sri Lanka to go work in the Far East or in the oil-rich countries are illiterate women. The highest foreign income earner for this country are our workers, expatriate workers, who are mostly unskilled workers. The tea plantations where we export our tea, over 80% of the workers are unskilled women. The apparel industry, which is our second highest export of this country, is 70% women and low-skilled women. So it is a big problem in Sri Lanka, and people don't realize it, because we boast of having the first female prime minister in the world, but it does not translate into society. Women are out there, women do go to school, but when it comes to job opportunities, they are at the very lowest rung. When we discuss this with the communities, and who themselves have sent their mothers and sisters to these overseas to work as housemaids, then they tend to step back and then they realize what the situation of the country is. But there is a need also to teach the boys. So that is why we are doing new curriculums to include the boys. But we will continue to emphasize on the girls' education part. If you look at university entrance in our country, there are 60% of the entrances girls, but they are all in art streams. They are not in engineering or medicine or even IT field. There are very few girls coming into the IT field or the new jobs, because they go to the easy traditional things of teaching or becoming a nurse. That's their only ambition. So our program actually helps them to build up confidence and understand that there are a lot of other opportunities for them. They can become entrepreneurs. That is one of the biggest benefits of our financial literacy program. And in our village areas, we have a huge problem of microcredit. And the microcredit companies know that the women are better risk than men, are lower risk actually. So the men force the women to go take these loans, and the men drink the money off or spend it. And the companies are running behind the women, demanding that they pay back. And actually, we have a high rate of suicide among these women because they are unable to pay back this loan. So it's a huge issue in the community. But we talk big numbers, 60% university admissions are female and all of this, and try to, gloss over the fact. But when we bring up the real issue, there is acceptance for our program.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a few more questions in the chat. We'll go through a couple more and then transition to New Haven Reads. And okay, so one question is, how has COVID-19 impacted your operations in Sri Lanka? And are there any long-term impacts that you anticipate seeing from that?
Yes, actually. Schools closed down in March last year. And they opened very briefly for about a month. And now they're closed down again. Or we don't know for how long. This has a huge impact on the children, and especially in the areas that we work in. Government and everybody just went online. They started having online teaching, some television. And we as Room to Read, we immediately also had to pivot all our efforts to be able to reach our children. So we started using radio, because radio actually has almost 100% penetration in Sri Lanka. So we started using radio to get through to the children. And we also, since we work very closely with these communities, we have their contacts. So we started talking to the parents, giving them ideas on how to keep their children engaged and to keep them learning through this time. We got the teachers to get in touch with the parents. We share a lot of digital content with storytelling. We used a lot of storytelling. We used celebrities, we used announcers, and we used, of course, all the digital media possible from WhatsApp to Facebook and all of that to get through to these children. But the internet access is very low. And even if they have internet access, they don't have the devices. I mean, only 40% of the children that or the parents of the children that we teach had access even to a smartphone. So it is very, very difficult. What we did was we developed, as I mentioned before, we worked with the government to develop a workbook, which was sent to all the children. Plus we developed worksheets, which we shared to these children. And our staff called these children and their parents and told them how to use these worksheets. So that is how we have been keeping them engaged. And some of the schools actually gave the books out, the storybooks out to the children to take it home and read. But unfortunately, not all the schools. So we've been trying very hard to keep the children engaged. We know for a fact that children have lost almost over a year of education now. And we have given materials to the teachers, and we have done online training as much as possible for the teachers to try to help them close the gap of all the learning that they have lost, especially in the reading and writing space. But it is a major concern for us. Children in the urban centers have more access to internet and even television, where government is running classrooms basically on television. But children in the rural areas that we work in don't have that luxury. So it is a major concern, and we are still unable to reach the schools and train and do the one-on-one work, and we don't know when we will be able to do that. But we will keep trying through worksheets and encouraging the teachers and using the mobile phone. That has been the biggest communication methodology we have used, because luckily we have mobile penetration is very high in Sri Lanka. And everybody seems to have a mobile phone. We have a 21 million population and 22 million mobile connections. So everybody has a mobile phone. So that is the medium we have used to get through to the parents and the teachers and to the children.
Sure, thank you. I think the radio example is particularly interesting. That's not something I think that we would really do here in the US. So one final question before we transition is, what are your future goals for Room to Read in Sri Lanka, and are there ways for our people to get involved?
So, as I said before, we hoped to, at Room to Read globally, we hope to double our impact in 5 years. Because we know the way we work is very comprehensive, but it's very difficult to reach large numbers in the way we work. So we have, in our Vision 2025 strategic plan for the world and for our country, we will continue to do our regular work in which we call our demonstration schools. And we are partnering with governments and other institutions to scale up some parts of our program to the schools that we don't work in. This way, we will be able to reach large numbers of children and without waiting to go with our full program. So we call this actually scale up. So right now, we are working with the government, for example, and we have developed, last year, we developed a teacher training manual for reading development for the government of Sri Lanka. And this manual has gone to all the schools around the country, and we hope to help the government train teachers in this reading activity. So this way, our impact will be felt in all the schools in the country, not only in the schools that we directly work with. So this is what we call in our lingo scaling up our impact by working with governments or other partners to work at least with some components of our program. We are also looking at opportunities of licensing the books that we publish. Because as I said before, our books are not for sale. But we now have all the legal things sorted out. And we want to talk to publishers and see how we can go on a licensing agreement with these publishers, so that our books and learning materials will be available in the market for a very reasonable price, so that children in other schools can also have access to our books. So these are just two examples of what we have in store for our new strategy of reaching 40 million children worldwide.
All right, that's so great. Thank you so much. I'll pass it over to McKenna and New Haven Reads. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I wanted to start by thanking Room to Read for their time. I learned a lot. We'll be posting the recording on our YouTube and Facebook so that members who are studying for finals tonight can rewatch it and see what Room to Read has been doing. Thank you so much for your incredible work. It was really a pleasure. I love hearing about what's been accomplished in terms of girls' education and also the effort for students in rural areas who are disproportionately impacted by the detrimental effects of the pandemic. So thank you so much, truly, for all that you do. Okay.
Thank you.
So Sandhya, if you wouldn't mind spotlighting Ms. Wengreen, I'll introduce her briefly and she can present on how you can help out with literacy here in New Haven. So Ms. Wengreen is the Outreach Director for New Haven Reads. She earned her Bachelor of Arts in Anthropology from Sacramento State University, and she comes to New Haven Reads with a wealth of experience in youth educational programming and volunteer management. She began her career teaching K-8 visual art after school programs, and most recently she worked as a consultant for the California State Parks Foundation volunteer program. Thank you so much for joining us, Ms. Wengreen. As I mentioned before, if through Room to Read's presentation you got interested in literacy, the issue of literacy, and getting involved in literacy work, Ms. Wengreen is going to present on an opportunity at the university in New Haven.
Well, thank you, McKenna, for that introduction. And Shevanthi, your numbers are staggering. We're going to go to a local level here, but it's really amazing to see sort of the global impact that you're having in the work that you do. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen. All right, can we see the presentation? So first off, my name is Natosha. I am the Outreach Director of New Haven Reads. New Haven Reads is a local nonprofit here in New Haven, Connecticut. We are a literacy program, mainly for students who are pre-K all the way up to high school, but we are a book bank as well, and we do pre-K kindergarten classes, all focusing on literacy support for our families and our teachers. But I'm going to start by talking more about sort of the stats of literacy, mainly in New Haven. You know, what is going on in New Haven public schools. What is the price of literacy? Because I like to talk in numbers. I'm a data person. Volunteer management, you kind of have to be a data person. And then New Haven Reads impact, who we are, what we do, how to get involved, volunteer opportunities, and then we'll watch some videos of let our students speak of the impact that we've had. So first off, the City of New Haven, I think this work was done 2 years ago. It hasn't changed much, if anything. I'm pretty sure it's gone up since COVID. 70% of New Haven third graders read below grade level. Similar to other urban cities, studies have shown that if a child is not reading at grade level by third grade, the chances that he will ever learn to read without intervention is very small, nor will they graduate high school. So that's a large percentage of our students. So even before the pandemic, teachers were stretching to teach students at different grade levels. And I love this pie chart because it kind of spells it out for you. So if you're in a 5th grade class, you know, 32.7% are at the third grade level of reading. You know, the 5th grade level, they're about 23%. Again, spanning 7 different grade levels. So our teachers are struggling to be able to reach each of their students. Not only that, but the ratio of students to teachers is quite large. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but it's definitely a large percentage of students compared to one teacher. And so really trying to reach those students one-on-one on a one-on-one level is quite difficult because they're all in different reading levels. So let's talk numbers. The price of literacy. So without intervention, 55% of these students will fail to graduate from high school. So as 1 in 10 drop out or incarcerated during their lifetime with an average length of stay for about 2 years, the average dropout is losing $5,000 for the first for time lost in prison, not to mention less qualifiable losses of employment, obstacles for the rest of their lives. High school dropouts typically earn $10,000 less per year than their peers. You know, who graduate, $36,000 less than those who earn a bachelor's degree or greater. This amounts to $260,000 lost in their lifetime. But also thinking of taxes as well towards going towards, you know, other programs for our government to supply. And without the services in New Haven Reads, of our 500 students each year, 275 could therefore be on a path to dropout. So that's the 55%, costing society up to $80 million. That's a large number to think about, but it's nice to put it into the price of literacy rather than just talking about the numbers of how many people would drop out or the percentages. And I like to think of it this way too, is the impact that we're having is not only changing kids' lives, but we're also impacting our society on a you know, again, taxes or the amount of income or the amount of, or the jobs that those students will be able to get by being able to read, being able to graduate high school and getting a good job or getting into college. So at New Haven Reads, 100% of our students are in this category, meaning that they, the only requirement that we have is that they're struggling to read. We don't care what school they come from. We don't care if they're low income. If they're struggling to read, we're here to help. And without intervention, about 55% of these students will fail to graduate high school. So we do see it as an intervention. We see it as if we were not to sort of allow that student to have this one-on-one attention that we give all of our students, they could be on the path to not graduating high school. Most of our students, we follow them after they graduate. I don't have the number off the top of my head, but it is a large percentage of them that definitely get into college. And we do have a lot of our students who come back and tutor with us. It's quite a great sort of program that we have called the Readers to Leaders. So some of our college students who used to be students with us do come back and tutor students in their community. So we also provide pre-K and kindergarten classes. So this is a prevention method. It's basically trying to reach those students before they hit that 3rd grade level to make sure that they have the foundations of reading. Their teachers and their parents also have the skills to teach them at home. And they get taught by, pre-K, kindergarten, and certified teachers. And it's not like a daycare, right? We're just strictly focusing on literacy, trying to get those foundations so that they can successfully move into 2nd grade and then on to 3rd grade and not be behind. So our program is based on the science of reading. It is highly effective. Last year, 100% of our students improved their test scores and 72% improved their independent reading level, a whole grade level or more within 6 months. We do have students who go up, 2 or 3 grade levels. Some of our students do have to be with us for a couple years. Majority of them is about 2 to 4 years, just depending on how much intervention they need, and trying to get them back up to their reading level or above. All right, so I'm going to switch gears a little bit, and I'm going to strictly talk about who we are at New Haven Reads, and then talk about some volunteer opportunities. So New Haven Reads is, again, it's a literacy resource center. It's strictly focusing on providing children tailored one-on-one tutoring for after school, educational family support. So we go to PPE meetings with our parents to support them in sort of talking about what would be a good goal to set with their teachers or their principals. And we are a community book bank, and it's all at no cost to participants. So we don't charge tuition, we don't charge for the public to come in and grab books, and we definitely don't charge to go help our parents sort of, create goals or strategic planning for their student to succeed in school as well. We started in 2001. Today, if we were to fast forward, we have grown quite large. We have 4, I consider it large, meaning in New Haven itself. We've grown to 4 sites. We reach about 550 students in a week. It's about 650 hours. Some of our students do 2 hours a week. Some of them do, some of our clubs. We have creative writing club. We do science club. We do math clubs. But again, focusing on that literacy and that one-on-one with our tutors is definitely the heart of our program. We try the best we can to reach our students and give them everything that they need to succeed. So that does include free books, that does include pens and paper and, school supplies that they need. In the pandemics, we switched gears and we were able to provide them devices. So we were able to find a grant and get them computers or hotspots if they needed it, so that their connectivity was good enough to be able to participate in our distance learning program, and reaching as many students as we could in that way. Again, we do pre-K kindergarten classes. We do field trips, which is really kind of a fun opportunity for volunteers, but also for our local classrooms and our teachers to come in, bring their students in to shop for books in our book bank. Creating those libraries at home, that's a huge focus of ours, not only for our students, but also for students in the public schools. So we have field trips. We do about 250 or 180, depends on the year, of those field trips. So they come in and they get 5 books to take home, and they are theirs. They don't have to bring them back. And it's quite fun to see their faces when they get all those books. and create their own, personal library at home. We also do teacher open houses where teachers come in and sort of huge tote bags or wheelbarrows, of books so that they can take them to their classrooms and provide some reading material for their students and or prizes. So they do give them out as prizes as well. All right, so these are our numbers. This was last year before the pandemic happened. So 580 students served in our program, 52 pre-K kindergarten classes. We have 450 active volunteers distributing, over 100,000 books. Last year we did 112 field trips in the book bank. So these are our demographics, but also sort of who we're reaching. So 81% average attendance. So we have a really high attendance compared to school. I think school is about 56% attendance. We're at 81. So our program, I think they know that it's important and their parents know it's important. So attendance is really high. 82% are low-income families. 100% of the students demonstrated improvement in scores. 72% increased their reading level by at least 1 grade. Most of our students, again, are low income, and most of the parents or the grandparents who are raising their children working multiple jobs. So we try to support them in other ways too, the best that we can, sort of the liaison with their school if needed. To make sure that the student is getting the resources on both ends, not just from our program, but also at the school. So our impact, like I said, we continue to grow. We have about 250 kids on the wait list. We know that the need is there. We know the need is great. We just have to find the resources. So fundraising, volunteers, budget to be able to grow, to reach all of those students, but that is our goal. So we're continuing each year to add new students, get students off the wait list. We continue to adapt our program as well. So it is research based. So we're working with an organization called Literacy How, to work on sort of structured phonics and sort of just adapting and molding our program just a little bit more to how the research is changing on how students learn how to read. We do have another program called the RISE program that is just the pilot for this year. It's a little bit more immersive for some of our students who really need extra support. They do 3 days a week, and it's a very structured program instead of our one-on-one tutoring, which is structured, but this one is very, very specific on structured literacy and what they really, really need to be able to get back up to their reading level. So this is our program. It is an hour long. We do multiple different learning styles. We start with Lexia, which is an online educational program. Most of the students are doing this in schools, but we focus on very specific things that they need by testing them. It's a tailored program to each student. So our students aren't just in a program at their grade level. It is very tailored to what the student is actually needing. So what skill, what's concept. And then we add on top of that read aloud, which is either the tutor or the student's going to read aloud. They're going to read to each other. This is probably the sweetest moment. You hear some tutors do voices, characters, and you hear the students do characters, right? We're trying to encourage the joy and power of reading. Reading, again, it's powerful. It gives students the power to feel like they can participate in a lot of things. It also gives them the power and joy to kind of go into their own world if they need to by reading a book. And we encourage not only our tutors and our students to read to each other, but we also encourage our parents to read to their students at home. That's also very important as well, or have their students read to them. The next component is workbook. This is kind of the level 2 step of Lexia. It's just learning in a different style, right? It's more about writing. It's more about sort of comprehension side of things. It's very tactile. It's building upon Lexia, the same concepts and skills, just a different learning style, so that it really ingrains in the brain. Specifically writing, when you write something out, it hits a different part in your brain. So again, we're based on the science of reading. There's a lot of new research coming out, which is really great. And we're adapting our program as we go along. And then the last part is choice time, which is, again, just doing something fun, but it's also bonding. So we find that our tutors and our students need to do something non-academic so that they can bond a little bit more, because our students tend to enjoy the academic parts of things, but it's nice to have this moment to just release and relax and share and communicate and be social with their tutor in a different way. And so it's mandatory that they all do choice time, because we want them, again, to sort of switch gears and do something fun and talk about their successes for the last tutoring session. So ways to get involved, volunteering. I'm a huge advocate of volunteering. I've been, a volunteer management person for over 8 years, either that be, outdoor science or literacy programs or education. So if you're passionate about reading, if you're passionate about helping your community, volunteering is definitely a good way to get involved. We also, donations, book drives, those are also really, really helpful, because all of our books are donated to us, and or we get grants to buy new books for our students. And then you can join our fundraising events. We do them, about 2 to 3 times a year. So those are also all ways to get involved. So if you decide to become a tutor, it's just an hour a week that we request. It's really great we match you with one student. It is the same time every single week, and you get to know that student really, really well, and hopefully build a bond and a friendship. We have 4 different locations. And then I'm just gonna let the students sort of describe what their tutors are like.
One of my experiences with my tutors is his name is Mr. Phil, and we have like a good bond, like I can call him like my best friend.
They're very nice and heartwarming because they always help me with something I'm doing wrong. I do a lot of games with my tutor. My tutors are very nice. My tutors are nice and good, and they help me if I make a mistake. My tutors help me in school, and they help me with stuff I don't know. My tutor's hardworking. My tutor's fun. Helpful. They're great because they help me with my reading, and I just hope they continue to do what they do to spread positivity. My tutor helps me with my workbook. My tutors are incredible. They're funny, and they make work easy. I feel like Humanitarian Reads has the best tutors out of any place I've ever gone to. I am grateful for my tutors.
My experience with one of my tutors, Miss Kirsten, she's like a mother figure to me. She's always there for me when I need her. She supports me through anything, and I really love her for that. And I'll always have her in my heart.
So we didn't pay them to say any of that. We just asked them to describe their tutors, and that's what we got. So it is very impactful. Some of our students, they don't have that extra support. They don't have, just having another adult who cares about them is a big deal, and shows up every week. So other things that we do on top of the tutoring and on top of the pre-K kindergarten classes is we are a training resource. So we do, a lot of tutor trainings, but we also do annual literacy topic specific trainings that are open to the public. So that includes teachers, that includes anybody who wants to learn a little bit more about our structured learning program or the science of reading. We also do a summer series where we invite experts from a variety of disciplines to come and talk about language and learning and literacy. Last year we had, a linguistics professor. We had a architect, which was really cool, who does libraries and sort of the science behind that, or the system behind that. And they just brought a variety of perspectives, and we will continue to do that series as long as we can continue to find people who are willing to do it. Other ways to volunteer, there is the book bank. You can always come and sort of shuffle books around, or you could be a field trip reader if that's something you'd like to do. So we do have other opportunities besides the tutoring. Student success stories. So again, a lot of our students are with us for multiple years. We get really attached to them. We graduate them. We give them a certificate when we feel like they're ready. We have a hard time graduating them because a lot of our students don't have the resources outside of New Haven Reads to continue the work. So we tend to make sure we check in with their teachers, we check in with their parents before we graduate them, because we want to make sure that it continues, right? It's a learning process is ongoing. So the last thing I'm going to show is just a video on our impact.
Founded in 2001 to share the joy and power of reading, New Haven Reads has distributed more than 2 million books and has transformed the educational and economic outcomes of over 4,000 students to date. Thanks to the dedicated support of 450 community volunteers, our one-on-one tutoring program serves over 550 students every week. Our program works.
When I first came to New Haven Read, I was reading at the second grade level. I was struggling a lot. I didn't like reading. I wanted to give up, but coming to New Haven Read helped me a lot. I got to start reading better. I was the highest reader in my class when I was in 4th grade. I got an award for best reader in the classroom, and after that, I started reading at home on my mom, my dad, my sister, my brother, and it's never stopped from there.
New Haven Read, it helped him with this whole everything. I'm trying to hold my tears back, but he was from no structure. There was no structure, and the impact on him was that New Haven Read helped him behavior-wise, attitude-wise. His reading was much. He wanted to read before he wouldn't read. Helped him with his sight words, to remember. That's one thing that you can read and couldn't remember. He can read and go back and tell you the story. That was the most important thing.
Working with Justin is the best. He helped me a lot. We stayed after over time just to help me with my homework, and it was fun.
Brandon came about as far as a student could. His confidence was very, very low. Once he started getting some traction, though, it was clear he had the ability. He just needed a little bit of direction, a little support, and the redundancy of practice. And from there, he took off. He was amazing.
My son is a senior now, and at the top of his class, and that's really touching. And I'm so sorry, but it really touches. It really helped him. It really changed my son.
The thing I love most about Brandon is once he got his confidence, he was hungry for information.
My future plan is to go to Alberta's Magnus College to study psychology.
It's an awesome program. That it is.
New Haven Reads is helpful and it helped me in life.
Because it's certainly the kids, every single one of them that I worked with gave me more than I could have ever given them.
It gets me every time, you guys. So stay connected. You can go to our Facebook, our Instagram. You can definitely check out our website. There's a lot of information on there. We even have our past lecture series on there if you're interested. And besides that, thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much for coming, everyone. If you want, we can close out if you want to stop. Yeah, great, awesome. So thank you so much for everyone who came today. My reflection is, obviously, New Haven and Sri Lanka are two very different places, but I found it interesting the parallels that just the difference that access to books can make, and having positive mentorship in your life when it comes to education, and the people and resources around you telling you that you're capable, that you can do it, and the opportunities provided. So thank you both for your time. We're a little bit over time, but I did want to pose just a couple of the questions that have been asked about New Haven Reads. So one of the biggest questions is just, how has COVID-19 impacted operations? Do things look a bit different in the coming year as far as getting involved as a volunteer?
Yeah, great question. So very similar. We transitioned in last March to distance learning. At the beginning, we lost about half of our students due to connectivity issues. So that was a challenge. It took us a little bit to sort of switch gears, but we do the same program just online. We were able to give them basically these care packages that had their workbook, had books in it, had supplies, so they had it at home, you know, a whiteboard, so they were able to hold up a whiteboard with their answers. So it took a little bit of time to get up and going, but we were able to get up to 279 students by April. So not that long. As we speak, we're continuing to add students. It's a challenge to try to figure out what the issues are. Sometimes it just has to do with they're just done with screen time. So, you know, thinking about being on the screen even more after school just seems like too much. Sometimes it had to do with, you know, the devices itself. So we had to get devices out there, had to get grants to be able to buy those devices. Sometimes it was the hotspots, multiple devices in the home. So their parents switched to working at home, and so they had to use the one device that they had. And so we had to be able to get siblings. So there was 3 people in the house that needed a device. So again, it was a lot of sort of logistics of trying to figure out what the issues were. But that's kind of where we pivoted. We did start to do pre-K kindergarten classes in the last semester, which is great. A little bit smaller classes, so they're about, you know, 4 students to a teacher, but it's in a group setting, which is, to be honest, it's mostly just very social, right? Just seeing other kids at that age, pre-K, kindergarten, you know, it's kind of, they just want to be able to talk to each other and just say, like, this is my name and I'm going to spell it for you. So it's just, we've had to transition a little bit for COVID, especially our book bank, I think, is the biggest transition because we haven't been having anybody in the building. So we've kind of been piling up with books because we've gotten more donations but less books out. So that was probably one of the biggest struggles for us, is just trying to find the room for the books. That sounds like a really silly thing, but it's kind of a logistical nightmare, trying to figure out space. And then also what are ways of getting these books out to people who really, really need it. So there's been a lot of, you know, events kind of where we're at the schools when they're doing food days, kind of like lunch days in the summer. So we did that last summer. We're going to do it this summer again, where we're passing out books while they're passing out meals for the students. So that's a lot of the shifts. Volunteer-wise, so what's happening now, our summer program does start in July, and it's going to be split. So we have some in person and we have some online. Fall is probably going to look very similar. So I think, again, there's ways to get involved if you're not going to be in New Haven during the summer or in the fall, because again, there's a lot of things juggling, where you can still be online with us, or if you want to and you're comfortable, you can be in person as well. So that's what it's going to look like in the coming future.
Thank you so much. So we're a bit over time. I guess I just wanted to close with one last thing, posed to both Ms. Wengreen as well as Ms. Shevanthi, if she doesn't mind. But I guess we wanted to know overall, what can Yale be doing, like, to help both of your organizations? What can Yale be doing? What can our student body be doing? What are things that you want to see out of an organization that has, like, such a global and domestic name?
I can go first. So Yale does a lot for us already. in some aspects, but I think awareness might be the biggest. So they've donated a couple of our buildings to us. So we are rent-free, lease-free in a couple of our buildings. They provided a grant for us for COVID, which was great. But I think awareness of that even in New Haven itself, there's a large percentage, 70% of the students who are not reading at grade level. And providing more resources to help those students in, elementary school, middle school, and high school. Either that be, again, by helping the teachers in the public schools or resources like supplies or other tutoring programs, because again, we can't do it all.
For us as well, the biggest challenge is, of course, fundraising. So, because the government in Sri Lanka, as I told, is unable to invest in education. So they do rely on non-profits like us to do proper training for their teachers. And as I mentioned, though we have done a manual for the government, they don't have the funds to train teachers on the reading activities. So that is an area that Yale can really help us with funding. And we can share with you, even as students, there are certain programs that, fundraising programs that you can do and is done by other universities and high schools. We can share that information with you. And if you can help us, that will be really great.
Yes, that would be much appreciated. Well, thank you both for your wonderful presentations and those closing actionables. I just wanted to extend again my thanks for coming, especially during these crazy, crazy times, for making time out of your schedule to speak with us, even though virtually. And we'll definitely be passing on the volunteer opportunities and the fundraising opportunities to encourage more support for your literacy initiatives. I'll pass it off to Sandhya to close, but thank you guys.
Yeah, I just want to echo everything McKenna said. Thank you all so much for speaking with us. Thank you everyone for coming. I know we did go over time, so I appreciate you taking the time to stick with us and learn more about literacy, both here in New Haven and globally. And we'll have the recording available online and share the resources as well through our year-on newsletter.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Have a nice evening.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.